Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Talking Triathlon, a podcast where two guys talk about the sport that they sometimes love. My name is Tim Ford, and I am joined by my good friend, Mr. James Bale, Jimbo, the sexiest voice in triathlon himself, mate. Sorry about last week. We missed an episode, and it wasn't your fault.
We did skip a week, didn't we? I was there. I was sitting here like an eager little
Ready to
bunny,
go.
ready to
Ready to
go.
talk
But
about triathlon,
yeah,
burst into the
instead I
scenes.
just talked to myself for an hour. It was all right. No, yeah. I mean, just as we were beginning to talk about when we were going to do timings and when we weren't going to do timings, because you were in Phuket as opposed to Sydney. I was in the UK. Time zones were hard. You had a huge amount on. I had a huge amount of traveling to do in the times that might have worked for you to record a podcast. So we just had to skip a week. It was admit defeat and come back this week ready to go.
And thank you. We got some nice messages from people when we put out a tweet saying it wasn't coming this week, and everyone was very, very positive about it. But yeah, honestly, I think like I was saying just before you record, I worked like over 100 hours last week. And the last thing I had the energy to do was get up at 4 a.m. Phuket time to do a
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah. That was the time we figured out was the only time we could do it, wasn't it? Your 4 a.m. and it was like my 11 or something.
Something, yeah, it was something
And
crazy
and
like
I
that.
just I just got back from Bristol. It was not good for either of us.
No, exactly. But it's good for you guys because here we are. We're back. I think we were sort of saying, I think we're probably gonna when I have those camps on because I do 3 or 4 of them here. It's too hard. So we'll try to work out a solution moving forward. But I think we just cook it out. So sorry about that. But guys, this podcast is Talking Triathlon. As I said at the start, if you enjoy the podcast and you want to find out more or get our bonus episodes or all that other stuff, head to patreon.com/Talking Triathlon. Jimbo, I'm not sure what you did on that bonus episode, but we had an influx of new patrons after your interview with Taylor, which I know I need to, but still have not listened to.
That
But
wasn't a bonus episode, mate.
no, I know it wasn't. But whatever you
That
did
was
on
a
it,
main episode.
I know. But
Oh,
whatever you
you
did on
called
it,
it a bonus. You said whatever you did on that bonus episode.
again, it's early.
But anyway,
I'm still feeling
anyway, yeah, it was, and we've had quite a lot of good feedback on that interview. It was an interview I enjoyed thoroughly, to be honest. I haven't enjoyed conducting an interview as much as I did that one for a long time. It was engaging and interesting, and yeah, Taylor really brought her game to the party for that chat, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I've had lots of people reach out and they'd be like, have you listened to it? I'm like, no, that everyone's even like, you need to listen to this interview. I'm like, fuck, Jesus Christ. But I'll get on it probably over this week when I'm writing. But like we were sort of saying it's kind of weird because it's relatively slim pickings, but there's still plenty to talk about. But there's something I do want to bring up to start with, and I literally thought of
Oh,
this just as you were talking, and I'm not going to name names and I'm not going to specify people, but I do want to address something that has come to my attention recently.
sounds like I'm in trouble, mate. Am I?
You're not
Have
in
I done something?
unless you work for World Triathlon. I don't think you should be in trouble. But we've had a number of athletes. One, I guess people will be aware that the way we do this show now is it's a lot less about an interview and more about just trying to talk to the pros in the sport about the state of the sport and their thought about the sport. And I think the thing that I've really appreciated this year is the open, candid conversations we've had with our guests. It's not, we really strive with this to try to make sure that we don't just ask the same questions and we're not, talking about the training. And I've really appreciated how open and honest they've been. So to hear that some athletes are getting a bit of blowback from the governing bodies of this sport based on what they say on our little podcast, to me is quite a concerning situation, because I feel like if athletes aren't able to speak up, and again, we're not talking about anybody saying anything inappropriate, false, defamatory, anything like that. So if athletes are able to come on our show and simply voice their concerns and have the governing body of our sport come down on them as a result of that, I think we're in a pretty problematic situation at the moment if that's the case, because we know the power that the governing bodies have over the athletes. So to hear them literally exert that power or subtly
Yeah, I mean,
suggest,
I know that there was some blowback, but what was the actual ramifications?
I'm not sure,
Tangible.
pull your head in sort of thing.
Yeah,
If
wind your neck in.
or you'll struggle to get starts at races and things like that.
That shows a real insecurity, doesn't it?
Yeah,
If you don't feel like it, and an inability to take criticism or even feedback, because it wasn't really, I guess it was criticism, but it was in a constructive, we can do this better type way. And if your initial reflex when you hear yourself being criticized is, I will use whatever power I've got to stop this
this.
criticism, make it so you can't speak. It's a weakness there, isn't there?
That's the first thing. Like, again, I think that if and this isn't, I think we've had several guests come on and make reference to different things that either Ironman, World Triathlon, the PTO, Super League have room for, have where they can improve. I don't think anybody said anything that is overly critical. I think it's all about, it's literally, I think, constructive feedback, to be honest.
And it makes the ecosystem more interesting, doesn't it? If you've got a bunch of robots out there who are just repeating the same praise for the dear leader, then it doesn't come across as authentic, because it's not authentic. What you want is a bunch of athletes out there representing your sport, each with their own individual views, opinions, positions, because that makes for an interesting sport for the consumer. If you haven't got an interesting sport for the consumer, you haven't got a fucking sport. You've got a game you like to play with your mates.
Yeah, like I feel like this sport is very much there's this I guess there's this false sense of security we see with triathlon, where we've said it a lot this last 18 months, 2 years, wherever there were genuine concern for the state of the sport, and to hear that everybody at the on the sort of upper levels are just plugging along like it's all business as usual, and how good are we? And I mean, I've heard things where that triathlons thinking they might have 3 events at the LA Olympics. It's like, don't know that that's going to happen. We know that they're trying to get the arena games into the Olympics at some point. Like, there's all this potential of fake positivity about, or optimism about, the sport, and then you actually get into the nuts and bolts, and we deal with sponsorship and things like that, and it ain't all roses, and the grass is not always greener. So to hear that there's not even the willingness to hear it or have anybody talk about it, like it's not even been, hey guys, knock on your door, I'd like to give you some feedback. It's just been spoken about publicly. Like we've done episodes about the ways we think World Triathlon, Ironman, PTO, Super League could improve. That doesn't seem to get a reaction. But as soon as an athlete who's in the system does, it's like, no, step back in fucking line. I have a huge issue with that, because it's I don't know, it makes me think of 1984 or any of those dystopian future things.
And you've got to remember as well that these people are adults. They are out there speaking their views, but they've started this sport at a young age. They're young people that have been brought up into the sport, conditioned to do this sport and to perform a certain way, and perhaps to think a certain way. You don't want to be, as a governing body, putting yourself in a position where you're telling people what to say or what to think, because as soon as you assert that level of control in that aspect of someone's life, it gives a certain permission for other elements of whatever that athlete's life are to assert control in a different way. Because if they see the governing body doing it, you think, well, I can do a bit of this. I can be in control of this for this. And whatever it is, whether it's coaches, whether it's sponsors, whatever it is, the fish rots from the head down. And if you're the governing body of the sport, set the standard at a certain level.
Well, I think we can say is that there's absolutely no problem with the way governing bodies or federations or anything deal with their athletes. Like, we've had no cases of things being mismanaged or athletes being bullied or abused or anything over the last. It's completely perfect. So nothing to worry about.
I think it's safe to say you and I won't be getting a call up for British triathlon or Australian triathlon anytime soon. Eh?
No, I do not think that is going to be happening.
I think we've simply for the contents of the podcast, nothing to do with our athletic ability or age.
Yeah, exactly. But I just wanted to get that out, because I did hear this, and I was genuinely like, you've got to be fucking kidding me, right? Like, how the fuck is that happening? Just it's mind-boggling to me. And again, I understand if you came out and probably if the governing bodies or the athletes said the stuff that we say in our bonus episodes, then I'd maybe understand it. But on the much more clean, suitable for public ears episodes that we regularly record, no, I don't think anything has ever been said on this show that's overly problematic or controversial. So yeah, disappointed.
Agreed.
Wanted to get that out of the way. But mate, look, there is actually some stuff to talk about. And I think that the first thing that I do want to talk about is about one of the absolute legends of our sport, who completed his last race over the weekend. And the result itself, while it's not fantastic, I mean, it's not terrible, I do want to have a bit of a chat.
4th place is not bad, is it? Just because it's not 3rd place at Phuket 70.3, mate.
Not a 70.3, mate. The Laguna Piquet Triathlon. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
And I will have you know,
yeah,
actually, I'll get the elephant out just because, again, I can. Here's my little, actually quite large trophy. I will have you know that it was funny because I was with the winners, Max and Kate, who obviously won the race overall. I was on the table and I came back and like the crowd was like, and I was like, this is the trophy that everybody came for, guys. Third place in the 35 to 39 category. Who cares about the winners? This is the real show. I'd had a few Chardonnays at that point. No, obviously it's Sebastian Kienle. Sebastian Kienle, you know, former Ironman and 70.3 world champion, one of the greats, one of the nice guys of triathlon, one of the funniest athletes out there, a guy that has had such a big influence on the sport, somebody that we both are humongous fans of, has
completed, he's a good bloke. He's a good
last
bloke.
race. And I just want to have a chat about him, mate, because I have always been a humongous, I keep saying humongous, Sebastian Kienle fan, but what a career, mate. What an athlete. And like with Jan Frodeno, leaves the sport, I think, in a much better place. But his absence will make the sport a little bit worse for me because he's an athlete that I've always loved to see line up at events.
Yeah, and his curve is cool, isn't it? You know, he came into the sport, he had 11th place at the 70.3 World Championships 2008. Then he wins that race in 2012, 2013. He wins Ironman Hawaii in 2014. And then he goes on to Frodeno kind of usurped him at that race following 2014. Yeah, because he got
Frodissimoed.
We were expecting him to kick on, but he didn't kick on at that race. But he had some strong results at that race. You know, he was always there or thereabouts. But he went and had a fantastic career following that. You know, 2014 to now is 9 years. 9 years at the relative top of the sport, having already won the World Championships and 70.3 World Championships. So yeah, what a performer and what a guy. And I love his outspokenness. He's not afraid to say shit.
He's like, that's what I mean. A true character of the sport. And genuinely one of the, we need more Sebastian Kienles in the sport. And you talk about his curve, right? Like, I still remember probably him starting was probably a little bit before I started triathlon in 2010. So he's around. I don't know. Chris was talking about how when he, you know, sort of first appeared, they're like, who the fuck is this kid who can ride a bike like this? But the evolution of Sebastian Kienle as an athlete, right? Like I, you know, he was always considered sort of the Uber biker, and then his run was not the best, or, you know, was always obviously good enough to win, but maybe he sort of got injured and came back, and like suddenly his run was this, you know, this absolute weapon of a leg, and he just became a really well-rounded, solid athlete. And, you know, that third place that he got in Kona in 2019 with Tim O'Donnell in second and Jan winning, that surprised me, and it just like was such a great performance. But yeah, just he made a difference on every race that he was in. He impacted in some way. Like he was never just a passenger. He was always a participant in every race that he did. And this year he had the farewell year, and we've seen him line up at a whole heap of events. He had a bunch of there was that weird period in the middle of the year where he got a bunch of drafting penalties, remember? And he was getting the shits.
Yeah, that was a bit disappointing, and not from his perspective, but I wasn't disappointed in him. I was disappointed in the way that seemed to roll out, because his competitors around him were saying, you know, he wasn't drafting. That was annoying for his swan song year. But I mean, what was his last real race? His real victory.
Oh, victory. Oof,
last real victory would challenge Samarin 2019.
Okay.
He won that. In the same year, he won something I can't remember. I'd have to go and check the PTO website. But since then, it's been lots of second places, third places. 2019, he got that third place in Hawaii, you've already mentioned, which was a very, very pleasant and welcome surprise, that one, because I thought his time had passed on the podium of that race. And it was a real pleasure seeing him up there. That was Lionel Sanders when he got second, wasn't it?
No, Tim O'Donnell was second. Tim O'Donnell was second.
Oh, it's sorry, yeah, I've got the wrong year.
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah, was it?
That was the year Jan did his masterclass. Jan was like 56,000 minutes off the front. Tim O'Donnell second and Sebi third. I can't remember who was.
Yeah.
That was it. The other, I mean, even for me last year being in Kona, I was following along with Sebi and Joe as they were sort of having their little, battle, I guess you'd call it. That was a really high, like that was one of the highs for me probably ever in the sport, was literally being with Sebi's coach and us sort of leapfrogging each other. And Joe would come past and be, fucking go, Joe. And then I'd be getting ready to go, and then Sebi come past, and Sebi's like, fucking catch him. He'd be like, sorry, I'm that's all good. And we leapfrogged each other. Most of the Queen came back towards Kona. That was like such a cool moment for me as just as a fan of the sport. But we've had him on the podcast.
He's a real pleasure to interview as well. I enjoyed that one. It was a long time ago. Didn't I say what?
You did the interview with him, and then you almost chatted with him as long after the interview was over.
Yeah. It got to the point where I felt I was starting to feel guilty, as if I was keeping him. We'd finished the interview and we were chatting away. And I was like, when you feel like I don't want to overstay. So I was like, maybe I should leave you to it. He's like, no, let's talk some more about this, and this. And I'm like, all right, just as long as you understand, you're doing this, not me. So we chatted for. Yeah, this is you. Yeah, we chatted for almost as long as the interview. It was cool. It was a good day. That was back in the days when I was sitting in my car at the top of the hill.
Do you remember those days?
Pretty good broadband days, but I'll reach out to him again. Maybe you could reach out to his manager, have a chat, see if you can get him on the pod.
Yeah, maybe I will. That's probably a good idea. Anyway, Sebastian Kienle, legend of the sport. Congratulations on an amazing career. You have made triathlon a better sport, and we wish you all the best for the future. So
absolutely, I echo that. And this isn't the end. This is just the end of that triathlon career. We're going to see him popping up doing all manner of stuff, I think, in the future going forward.
Yeah,
I think we'll be surprised with what he does next. Good luck with it all, mate.
Yeah, good luck, Sebastian. Another little sneaky bit of weird news that I heard this week that surprised me. So there's a new race that's happening in Australia this weekend called Challenge. Actually, what's the capital of Australia? Do you actually
know? Brisbane.
Correct. It's Brisbane. No, Canberra. So
Challenge. Fuck me. Right.
I thought you were joking. So Challenge Canberra is happening this weekend. It's the inaugural, because Challenge have been announcing a whole heap of races. It's not what I wanted to talk about. Daniel Beckergaard is racing Challenge Canberra this weekend. And I heard this. I'm like, what the fuck? That's so random. Canberra is an inland city about 3 hours west of, maybe 3.5 hours southwest of Sydney. And Daniel Beckergaard, Danish superstar triathlete, is doing the event. And
is there a pro field?
Yeah, there's
other pros, but is it just mainly Australians, like a local sort of pro thing, sort of third tier, fourth tier pros?
Yeah, Australians are all top tier pros.
Daniel will come fifth again, won't he? I think I messaged him about a week and a half ago, and because he'd been a bit sick, so I messaged him to just to check in and say, how you doing? Are you back on your feet? How you feeling? And he said, yeah, I'm back in the game. And I said, mate, stop coming fucking fifth and start dominating some shit.
If he doesn't dominate this race, something is extremely wrong. I think
something's amiss.
Something has gone horribly, horribly wrong if we do not see Daniel Beckergaard win this. Also, Fenella Langridge is there too, which is another one that I was like, fucking hell. Oh, Canberra's pulling in the big names. I heard this and I thought, fucking hell, that's random. I think he's doing Bustleton at the beginning of December. So he's probably in Australia for that.
But fuck me. No. No. I forgot. We had a chat. He told me why he's doing these Australian races. I completely forgot. It went out my head. He's taking his, I think it's his mum over as like a gift. She wanted to see Australia. She'd never been. So he's taking her over for a period of time and he's getting some races in while he's over there.
So it's a tax write-off. So he's like, yeah, mum, I'll take you on holidays.
Yeah. He's my manager, I promise.
Oh, well, that makes a bit more sense because I was very surprised by that. But I mean,
so he's got like a little Australian tour going on.
There you go. Good on you, Daniel.
Off-season kind of Australian jolly trip.
Just do some races as part of it.
Yeah, why not?
Anyway, Challenge Canberra's happened this weekend. Daniel Beckergaard is racing. So that's a roundabout way.
And Fenella Langridge. Let's see who wins that. So that'll be Fenella and Daniel winning Challenge Canberra.
I think so. I mean, there's some pretty good. I don't even know who's on the start list, to be honest. I got a few friends who are racing the event because I didn't even know there was a pro race. And then I saw something come up and I was like, what the fuck? Yeah, anyway, that's that. But
how good was the start list at Challenge Melbourne that Hayden won?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was okay.
I'm just interested because I looked at the finishes and it was all Australian or New Zealand flags. There wasn't really anybody from any other nation.
It's not I think if you look at that, what do the PTOs just give it, a bronze tier or whatever? Like it's what you see in Australia particularly is you see the same names on every start list. You see the same
Yeah.
5 or 6 or 10 athletes.
Do you think that's because it's just such a ball ache to get there?
Yeah. I also
People
just
don't
think
bother.
I think the timing probably doesn't work as well. Australian
Yeah.
summer is Northern Hemisphere winter, and a lot of the athletes who've raced through that European North American summer are done. I mean, every athlete we've been speaking to the last few weeks have just been hanging for that off season, and yeah, it's Australian racing season. It's weird, right? Like you don't see many Australians leave Australia to race these days. Like very few do, and when they do, they don't do particularly well. And you don't see many international people come to do the races here, but with the exception of probably Ironman New Zealand. I think Ironman New Zealand does tend to get some bigger, more international names. But even Cairns is not always the strongest field, although I believe next year it's going to be probably better with the Ironman Pro Series. But look, yeah, Hayden was, to me, never going to lose that race. I think it was fairly obvious. It was more.
I mean, he didn't just win it, did he? He was head and
Fucking
shoulders,
hell, mate.
head and shoulders above Nick Thompson, who came second.
Yeah, he schooled those little boys. Like, was it 8 minutes or something? Like,
Yeah, and it's quite weird, isn't it, seeing Hayden Wilde lead a swim out?
Yeah, that made
by
me
that
that
by
made
a
me laugh.
distance, by 12 seconds.
I messaged him about that. Or like we were messaging. I was like, Hayden, this is your true calling, mate. Or something's wrong in triathlon when Hayden Wilde's leading out the swimming race.
Well, didn't he send us in the group? He sent us a picture of him leading the swim out and said, when it feels like you're last out the swim again, but you realize you're leading by 12 seconds.
Fuck, it was good. But mate, that performance, I mean, I think that if you're a current 70.3 athlete, you'd be looking at that performance fucking shitting yourself. Like genuinely.
Yeah, it's strange. Not strange. It's not strange. It's well done and expected. But what I mean is, as opposed to some of the athletes we've been talking about a bit recently, when I see him on that time trial bike, he looks smooth and comfortable and dialed in. He for a short course athlete, he looks at home on that time trial bike. For someone who hasn't done many long course races in the aero position, he looks like he is at one with that bike and putting out watts and cheating the air nicely. And it's a real joy to see, because I'm here for that.
Did we talk about Noosa? The fact that he also went up and broke the course record in Noosa the week before?
No, we didn't, because we skipped.
But I mean, you're right. Like he is. We know that he's a good bike rider. We see him constantly in short course racing, having a race through the fields, get to the front and then sort of dictate. But like genuinely, I will die on this hill. I've said it for years. I'll say it again. Like I think that those lifetime athletes who have gone through the system. I mean, I had sort of came to it late, but he's gone through the Olympic cycle twice now. He's going to be a medal favorite for Paris. Like, I just see that when those athletes successfully transition up to middle distance, they're just in a class above. And Hayden, he wants to go and do that Taupo 70.3 World Championships next year. If he keeps racing like this, I don't know who could probably, unless you got, an informed Kristian, an informed Gustav, Martin Van Riel is there. But all those names I'm saying, these are Olympic distance athletes who've stepped up.
Yeah. It's remarkable. I mean, he biked to 156 and he ran a 108.01.
Yeah.
It's a really, really strong run.
And that
I don't know a huge amount about the course, but I do. That's a strong run.
I know it really well. I've done that race. I've done it as challenge. I've done it as 70.3. I've done it in the old location. I've done it in the new location. It's not a slow course in the sense that it's not challenging, but by the third, I think it's 3 laps. It must be congested as fuck on that road. So to hold that high an average speed, and sorry, Hayden ain't drafting off nobody, riding at those speeds compared to a lot of the other people. It's just unbelievable, mate. And we know that he's had the TT bike for most of this year. Like I know that. I mean, I'm assuming that when he went to Canyon, that was part of the sort of pitch riders that I also want to go into 70.3. Do you see him? I mean, how do you see it for somebody like Hayden? Do you see him going, okay, this is working. I'm going to go to the Olympics in Paris. I'm going to take my second shot at trying to win a gold medal. Do you think we're going to see him continue his short distance, or is he going to go, fuck this, I'm all in on middle distance? What do you think the approach is?
I almost asked him that question in the group the other day, because we got a little WhatsApp group, and I held back on it because I didn't want to be
cliche,
sort of. Yeah, and also just applying that pressure to his brain at this point in the season when he's got the Olympics coming up next year. I just didn't feel it was relevant or necessary to have that answer. But yeah, I mean, I wonder, my question was going to be, is this going to be your last Olympics, or have you got 2 Olympics left in you? Because we've seen recently, haven't we, from certain athletes, that some athletes can manage the back and forth, whereas we've seen some go too long with the Olympic cycles. And then when they do go long,
it's too late.
It looks like it's too late, and things are breaking down. Systems are breaking down. Injuries are, recurring, and surgeries are needed, etc. We you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but
we know who we're talking about.
Just
the Brownlees, Ali in
yeah,
particular.
yeah. And I wouldn't want to see that happen to Hayden. I want to see him find his specialism and really stake his claim at that and get the best out of himself that he can possibly get in whatever area he decides to focus on. Now, that might be the Olympics. He might go and get a gold medal and then back it up with another gold medal in 4 years' time. Who knows? But if he doesn't get a gold medal in this Olympics, he's shown that he's got a real affinity for 70.3 racing, and which, in my opinion, would probably reach out to that PTO distance and the Ironman distance too, with a bit more work maybe for the Ironman distance. But he's I'd like to see him really have a go at that.
I think there's 2. I mean, again, Hayden, I know you sometimes listen. I don't know anything, but I think there's sort of the branching paths in the next 12 months. I think that if he wins a gold medal at the Olympics, I'm probably the opposite to what you just said. I think that if he wins the gold, he will go away and go, fuck this, I've done it. I mean, he'd probably like a WTCS world title. So I could see him hanging around to do that, because he's now missed out twice, 2 years in a row. You fuckwit. Come on, mate, do better. But I think if he gets a silver, which is probably my prediction at this point in time, I would predict Hayden to get a silver medal in Paris. Then I could see him having another crack at it. But I don't think we would see him purely focus on it moving forward. I think, not that he's surprised, but I sort of pick up that he's quite shocked by how well he did at that race. And he's probably thinking, fucking hell, this went all right, like this wasn't too bad. So
he was only racing Aussies though, wasn't he?
That's true. It's true, mate.
Fucking Aussies.
But again, you look at that's what I mean. Like, you look at the actual numbers, objectively, they're fucking red hot. Like, really, really significant. And looking at him as an athlete, like, he has the composition I would expect of an athlete who would do better at the longer stuff. Like, he's a bigger athlete. He's not like an Alex Yee. He's not like a Tyler Mizachuk. He's not like, a Leo Booth, or maybe like Leo a little bit, but he's a strength-based athlete to me. We see how good he is on the bike and run. And we know that the longer the distance, the more important the run becomes. I think that if he did turn his attention along, he could do some real damage. And that's what we keep saying, is that's that next wave coming through. And that's when things are going to get fucking red hot, mate. So,
and he is an athlete who truly understands the importance of the details.
Yeah.
He's got that built into him, partly from his background at the short course, which he's still in, because those details are so important in short course racing, but also just because he's an aficionado of cycling and the sport, and understanding how important, like I said, that bike position is, and getting to grips with it and understanding it and dialing it in and finding that point where you're so dialed in, but power starts to drop off if you dial yourself in anymore because you can't hold it. So, you bring yourself back a little bit, you compromise a bit of aero because you can get the power, and you do those calculations. And he's that kind of guy. And if he can't do it himself, he'll get somebody to help him who can. And yeah, I've got a lot of optimism for his future in sort of half distance and full distance. And I think those PTO races will suit him as well.
Spoiler alert, we're big fans of Hayden Wilde on this podcast. Shocking.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
But then we had Amelia Watkinson
At least we're upfront about it.
Yeah. We had Amelia Watkinson win the female race. Amelia's had a really solid year. So to actually, walk away with the victory, she won a challenge race, I think, in Korea earlier this year. And then she's been, I think top 10 in the whole, she was 8th at 70.3 worlds. She was 4th in PTO Singapore. So she's been up there or thereabouts. Amelia made a change of coaching this year, so she's now working with one of the best coaches we think in the sport, Dave Tilbury-Davis, friend of the podcast. And to see Amelia get that victory as well, I'm actually going to sit down with Amelia in the probably early next year, and we'll do an episode with her because she has a unique perspective. But she's won some crazy amount of 70.3 races. So to see her on the top step, but that race again between Amelia and Natalie Vancouver, I don't know if you were following, I was, but literally came down to like the last kilometer where the gap was sort of slowly getting smaller on the run. And I would have expected Natalie, with her short course background, to probably have the better run, and to have Amelia sort of pip her inside the last kilometer was, again, would have been cool to watch. It was fun to track, but great to see Amelia get back on that top step. So that was Melbourne.
Yeah, it is a real shame that we don't get to see as many races as we want to see. But, you know, it would have been a good race to see. It really would, that one. It was close. And Amelia is a hell of an athlete.
Exactly right. Mate, I think we just got a few races to actually talk through. Oh, no? Hands up.
I've got a question for you, though, first.
Okay, let's do
it.
I
want to know, where does a high rocks competition fit into triathlon
Don't
training?
fucking get me started on this fucking... Jesus Christ. Joe told me he wanted to do this in Nice. Like when I was over in Nice with him in, what was that, August? And he was talking about this, high rocks thing. And my first question was, firstly, what the hell is high rocks, and why the fuck are you doing it?
It's an injury waiting to happen. That's what it is.
That's what I told. I said, seriously, Joe, this shit can wait until you retire, mate. Like, you are a professional triathlete. Do not do this. And I always tell the story about, which I think is actually a really good example, was last year in Bahrain after the race when we went go-karting. Kristian Blummenfelt, friend of the podcast, was just like, no, I'm not doing it. Don't want to risk it. And I was like, fucking, that's good. Like, that's, you respect it, right? Like, I'm all about my sport. Don't want to do anything that's going to diminish it. Then I got Joe. So yeah, I'll fucking do a high rocks thing. Oh, mate. Yes, I did. I thought I had talked him out of it. And then to see that come, I was like, motherfucker. He's still.
It's like the championship of what's they call that
CrossFit?
CrossFit. It's just like CrossFit, isn't it? It's like CrossFit championships, basically.
Must
it's
be
that kind of form, yeah, where you turn up, you do lunges, you do weights, but it's all functional movements, and
I guess you'll be there, right? You'll be there doing it. Obviously, you're a specimen of a man that you are. You obviously love you're in the box all the day doing your WODs, all that stuff, right?
I don't know what any of those words mean, if I'm honest. I don't know what a WOD is. I'm not sure what a box is.
Workout of the day, and I believe a box is what they call their gyms in CrossFit. So there you go.
Okay. No. I've never CrossFitted in my life. No.
Either have I.
I'm more of a classic compound lifts man, if I'm honest.
Okay, Olympic lifts and things like that. There you go. Yes, Joey's doing that goddamn fucking race. Or not even race, whatever it is. Just don't get hurt, Joe.
Is he going to win? Is he going to win the high rocks?
No way, man.
And then he's going to retire from triathlon and take up professional high rocks racing.
Probably make more money too. Yeah, anyway, we do have some races to talk about that have happened, apart from just the ones that were like 2 weeks ago. We had Ironman Cozumel, where we talked about Sebastian Kienle coming forth over the weekend, which got turned into a duathlon. Now, I don't know if you've seen this, but did you see the unswimmable conditions on that course?
I did not know. No, what happened?
It was, I mean, I don't know whether this is a gut reaction to what happened in Ireland earlier this year, where like that was pretty rough, right? And we had the athletes die, but it didn't look that bad to me, mate. And again, we know that this is a tight assisted swim, so the athletes wouldn't have even been in the water that long. But yeah, it got converted to a bike run.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw Leon Chevalier walk away with the win.
We did indeed. And on the women's side, it was Brutes Frades Laraldi.
That was strategic on me, by the way. You notice.
Yeah, from Spain. You forced my hand, didn't you?
A little bit.
But yeah, I never like to see a bike run. It's part of the reason I don't race. When I was doing multi-sport, I didn't ever race in the UK because I hated swimmers being cancelled. And it is annoying because it's not the sport that we love, a bike run. But, to see Leon Chevalier and the women's winner, whose name I will not butcher again out of respect for the fact that she's probably got a way of pronouncing it correctly and I can't do it. But yeah, she won in 7:36.10 and he won in 6:42.31 ahead of Chris Lefferman. What do you know about this race?
I mean,
other than Kienle was there and came fourth.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, this is the race where we saw Kristian do that incredible 7:21 a couple of years ago. So it's always a race that I sort of watch with interest because I like again, I like the fast races. I like people who are going for those fast times. And Leon Chevalier is an athlete that I have a lot of time for. Like, I think he's one of the most underrated athletes in the sport. I mean, I'm sure by this point people are rating him, but like he, to me, is a really, really classy athlete and happy to see him. And he's had I think I saw a statistic. It's only him and Sam Laidlaw have finished in the top 10 at the last 3 Ironman World Championships. That's it. And I mean, that's a fucking pretty amazing statistic. So
yeah, that is cool.
very happy to have him get that win. I think he deserves it. He's a very hardworking athlete. I expected him to have a big year, and it's good to see him, finish the year with that victory. But yeah, Leon Chivek, I think I also saw that means that he's in the top 10 for the PTO rankings. They've moved around a little bit because it's almost all done now. I think there's
Ruth Astle. Ruth Astle was in the women's race.
I wanted to talk about that. That's where I was getting
DNF though.
Yeah, look, I'm getting concerned about Ruth, to be honest, mate, because it's a constant battle with injury for her, right? Like we saw her, she won Ironman Israel last year when we finally thought, fuck, look at this run. Like Ruth's cracked the code. Here we go. Injured. And then we saw her race Kona and now injured. And I don't know what it is, mate, but it's really upsetting because we're both huge Ruth fans. And yeah, I did see this, and my first I was like, oh no, not again. Like poor Ruth. Yeah, it's terrible.
What was the problem? Do you know?
Then I think it was her Achilles, which has been problematic for a while.
Yeah.
I think I saw a post, and it was something like a couple of K in, it was bad, and she just couldn't do it.
But I mean, it's the clever decision to make if you're in a race and you feel that pain, because you don't want to run yourself into a really bad injury. But this does seem to be a bit of a recurring theme.
Exactly, and just I don't know what it is, but I really, really hope she can get it sorted because seeing her what she did in Israel last year, she was on the path, and I really hope we get back to it. But the interesting thing I think this year that we've seen, and I don't know if it's because the men's race World Champs was earlier, but I've been surprised to see the quality of the start lists for so many races at the end of the year. And I think the part of the reason might be is we know that I'm sort of trying to segue into this, right? Is that Ironman have changed or reintroduced their qualification process for the Ironman World Championships over the COVID period. And it was basically you just got a slot. Because we were discussing, remember this year when Sam Laidlow kept pulling out of races, we're like, how does he ratify a spot? It turns out he didn't need to. Whereas this year, moving forward, even if you've won the race, you still have to complete either an Ironman race or two 70.3 events in order to qualify or to race the World Championships. I think this is interesting because we have got a number of athletes who are looking to do the double of the Olympics and Ironman next year, namely Kristian Blummenfelt, and then you've got potentially Taylor Knibb. I'm curious how they're going to make this work, considering the change to the qualification process. Firstly, we know that Ironman offered both Flora Duffy and Kristian a wildcard entry to Kona in 2021 when they won the Olympics. But I don't think we can assume that's a guarantee again, especially as Kristian's a former world champion. They're going to be like, well, you can do a fucking Ironman, mate. Go and do one. What do you see? How do you see this playing out?
I mean, this is something me and Taylor discussed in the interview. She was saying that she'll have to go and qualify for Kona, to be able to go and race there. Because as someone who hasn't won the race before, she'd have to do that anyway. She's not looking to ratify, she's looking to qualify.
Is it? She finished fourth, right? Don't the top five get a slot? They just didn't she qualify in Kona?
Oh, okay, yeah. I'd missed that. But yeah, okay. So she was saying in the interview that she would have to go and race a race, and it would have to be before the Olympics. Yeah. And that is a problem for someone who's doing a build-up for an Olympic short course race. Because, where do you put that Ironman? Do you put it as soon as possible? Or do you put it later in the year? I mean, it's got to be as soon as possible, isn't it?
You think so, right? Like, I mean, let's look at a Kristian, right? Let's look at Kristian Blummenfelt. The men's race is much further away from the Olympics than the women's, or not. It's like what, a month's difference. But we know that Kristian has gone, I am all in on short course. He did the PTO race, and then he's like, in 70.3 was, and he had that, that week of fuckery that we saw sort of broke him. And he's like, no, it's all short course now to the Olympics. So I think I'm pretty confident in saying we're not going to see him doing 70.3s or Ironman races until after Paris. But I wonder what we're going to see him do after, or does this mean that dream that he had of only doing, doing the double is not going to happen this year or next year?
Yeah, I think it's going to make it more difficult. And if I was him, I would just, as soon as I possibly could, I'd go and jog an Ironman.
Do not
Really, really gently.
not 270.3s?
No, I wouldn't do 270.3s. Bollocks to that. You'll
I
get
think it's,
sucked into racing that, wouldn't he? I would go and jog around an Ironman really, really gently.
you don't think the preparation for, I mean, we know that they say that the 70.3 and Olympic distance are close, at the sort of closest comparable of how you race them. You know, an hour 45 compared to 3 hours, you know, it's double. But I would say that doing 270.3s like now, like I'd be like, mate, you should have done Mossel Bay, and then you probably should have gone and done Bahrain, or like get them out of the way. I don't know. I just feel like I can't see either of them doing an Ironman. I mean, Taylor Knibb in particular with the shorter time gap, to me is probably the least possible. I mean, it's Taylor Knibb. I would never count her out, but I can't see her racing the Olympics, finding an Ironman or even 270.3 race, and then actually having the ability to prepare properly for Nice. It's a big ask. Whereas Kristian, I wouldn't be surprised, right, if he did the Olympics and then the week after he did another race, and then the week after he did another race, and boom, he's at Kona and he wins the thing. Like it's
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly put an extra spanner in the works for them. I just think that if you could use an Ironman as a really light training day.
Yeah, it's true.
Not light as in volume, but light as in effort. For just go out and just be aerobic all day, really gently. An athletes at their level are capable of that.
But haven't they changed? Isn't there some weird wording, right? Like you can't just go around the course, because remember we had Pete Jacobs years ago, like walking the run, eating a bag of chips, just because he had to. Like it used to be literally just finish an Ironman. Because I think now you need to. I think it's like something vague, like you need to finish competitively or something, because it is sort of trying to stop that exact thing from happening.
So there's a vagueness to it enough to allow the race referees to make a call if needed.
Yeah, there's some weird thing like that. But the next thing I wonder is do you think Ironman actually care about, like, do you think Ironman is sitting as an organization going, we've seen the heat that they've copped this year or the last year, I suppose, about the change of venues, the struggle to field the fields, the fact that it's too expensive. Like this has been a lot of negative press for Ironman. Do you think they're sitting there going, we need, like, they made the choice to reintroduce this system, and they must have had full knowledge that a Kristian Blummenfelt, maybe not a Taylor at that point, but they do know now, would want to do both. Do you think that they care? Do you think that they're going, fuck, actually, maybe we do need to consider some alternative to get these guys in the race? Or are they just like, fuck it, we're Ironman. We just, if they're there, not, nobody cares about the pros. It's actually about the age group. Like, what, as an organization, what do you think they're?
No, I think with the introduction of their new series that is going to start next year, I would say, for the first time in the lifetime of this podcast, I feel like they care.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's taking that step to introduce that pro series and putting that money up to pay the pros that are going to do it, and making it something that's going to be broadcast, and trying to create an environment where a pro series could flourish. And I'm like, all right, for the first time since we've been recording podcasts, I like, all right, no, maybe in this instance they do care. Because if you're going to make that pro series a success, you want to get the biggest names in the sport to be racing it, don't you? And Taylor Knibb and Kristian Blummenfelt are two of the biggest names that could be racing that pro series next year.
Do you think then, now here's an interesting conundrum. Do you think Ironman believe that maybe if they do make it hard enough for the Kristians and the Taylors to do the double, in some way they're thinking, well, why don't we just entice them to not do the Olympics? Like, do you think that you don't think they think that's possible?
Nah, no one's that stupid.
I mean,
they won't. They've prepared for this cycle. They've qualified. You know, like, no one's that stupid.
Do you think
that would be? It would be a ridiculous thing to think. That it's like saying, oh, we'll try and tempt Alex Yee away from the Olympics.
Again, I just want to give you some context, right? We're talking about Ironman.
Yeah, I know.
And you're sure that they don't have the hubris to think, no, they should want to do our series. Like, again, because you just said it, right? They've set up this pro series because they actually want this to be successful, and they want the biggest names there, right? And they're looking currently going, well, we can probably get, we know Kristian wants to do, but he's got the. Do you think that maybe they're thinking, fuck, actually, I've setting this up. Maybe the Kristians will go, fuck the Olympics. I want to go do the Ironman Pro Series. Like, you say that it's ridiculous, but I also think that Ironman being Ironman might actually think or want that. You can't.
Now, I know that this is coming off the back of a couple of weeks ago. We did an episode where we strongly suggested that we both thought the allure of the Olympics would fade, meaning the power of the federations would fade,
Yep.
and the power of WTCS would fade. And there's me saying, no, they won't ever not do the Olympics. I'm talking in this one isolated situation here where we are. We're this far away from Paris. They've put a load into it. They know what they're going to do. They want to race Paris. Kristian's coming off the back of a gold medal. Taylor's going in to try and, stake her claim, having had the year of her life. I don't think we are going to ever see either of them step away to the Olympics. I know that's a different question, different answer. That's an answer to a question you weren't asking. But I also think no one's stupid enough to think that they would. So no, I've got to say.
You know, Messi's sitting there getting his big offers going, nah, fuck the Olympics. It's all about Ironman. Ironman is the sport of triathlon.
No,
a little bit. I think a little bit there's a possibility. I think there's a
chance that they might think that, but that they can think that the Olympics will never be as big as Ironman. But no one logically would ever think that anyone from the short course realm who've put all of their energy into thinking that they're going to go and win a gold medal in 6 months' time, 7 months' time, would ever step away from that journey now for the sake of an untested series.
Okay, I'm going to then say that I'm completely illogical because I actually wouldn't be surprised.
No one delivers me coffees mid-podcast, mate.
It's a good service, mate. The service is
a good service, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Taylor went, fuck the Olympics, I'm doing this instead. Like, genuinely, that would not surprise me. I'm not saying she will. I don't think she will. But if she did, Kristian, I can't see that happening. Kristian's a defending gold medal. He's going to do the Olympics, 100%. We're going to see Kristian in Paris. He's been very vocal about that. Taylor Knibb, however, I feel like we've heard enough over the last few years about how her passion is long distance racing and she's kind of doing the short course stuff because she kind of has to.
You need to listen to the interview I did with her. Because at the end of that interview, I said, what excites me most about the way you live this sport is wondering what you're going to do next and finding out what you're going to do next. Because it's it's always something random, obviously within the confines of triathlon. I think in the interview, I said, I wouldn't be surprised to find out you're doing an ultramarathon or something just to see what it was like. Because as you said to me in response to that interview, which you haven't listened to yet, she mirrors Kristian Blummenfelt in my mind. She's got that kind of, those two mirror each other on across that gender divide within the sport. And it's brilliant to see. But no fucking way is she ever going to not do the Olympics and go and focus on Ironman.
Did she say that? Has that been verbalized?
No, that's me saying that.
I'm not saying she will. I'm simply saying, as you have just pointed out, that it is exciting to see what's next. And if Tri 24/7 puts out an article next week saying Taylor Knibb has withdrawn, she's decided she's all in on the Ironman Pro Series, she's given up in the Olympics, America has to find 3 women to race, I wouldn't be going, fuck, I can't believe it. I'd be like, I'm not surprised by
that. If that happens, I'd pay your shopping bills for a year.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Kristian, no. Taylor, maybe. That's where I'll go.
Fair enough.
I love that you're just like, what sort of illogical fucking idiot would even think it's remotely possible? Like me, that's me over here. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, and again, we sort of touched on this a few weeks ago. I can't remember where. The PTO were talking about this. We now know the PTO have announced 2 of their. Remember how they promised the world last year or this year with their pro series and all this stuff was coming? It's exciting. The athletes getting their contracts, blah, 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 blah. We're in nearly December. We've had 2 races confirmed. I think some athletes have probably got contracts based on, we saw those social media posts going out a couple of weeks ago. It was like Magnus Ditlev, Kristian Blummenfelt, Alistair Brownlee, Lucy Charles. Who else do we see put them up? I think it was Emma Pallant Brown, maybe. There's a few athletes who must have got their contracts, right? But we have 2 confirmed races. Singapore in April.
Yep.
What the fuck is that? It's done it again.
Yeah, mine does that all the time now. It's well annoying. And I don't know how to turn it off. I tried to turn it off, but it tells me it's off and it still does it.
Audio listeners, I was just
that as well.
No, oh no, what the Jesus Christ.
If you do a double thumbs up, you get one of those.
Audio listeners, you should head to youtube.com to find out the fuckery that just happened. Anyway, so there's 2 confirmed races, and we've got Ibiza in September, which is either the week before or the week after the Women's World Championships. When they were announced or in the process of announcing the Ibiza race, they announced that it was the European Middle Distance Championships for World Triathlon. As we know that this is a partnership with World Triathlon. For professionals, we know that this is their Middle Distance Pro World Championship Series. So they came out and said, this is the Middle Distance European Championships. And the World Triathlon went, no, it's not. You're not allowed to say that about us. Because again, nothing is simple with triathlon. Nothing is clear. What we need is more titles, more championships. This week, World Triathlon came out and said, actually, our European Middle Distance World Championships isn't in Ibiza with the PTO. It is, in fact, in Portugal. And I am starting to wonder what that relationship is like between World Triathlon at the moment and the PTO. What do you think, mate?
I mean, it's got a bit of a hint of behind the scenes, slightly fucked off with each other, hasn't it? You know?
Oh, yeah.
Because
happy, would you?
You can assume, reading into this and reading into this little journey we've been on, you can assume the PTO were negotiating for their race to be the Middle Distance World Championships and were confident enough in their position that was going to happen. So announced it. World Triathlon said, hold up, we haven't agreed this yet. And then went and whatever confidence levels the PTO had, that didn't transpire into actually having that title for their race. And they've gone and announced a race in Portugal as their race. Now, it's just not a good look, is it? I don't really care about the backroom dealings. I don't care about the relationships. What I care about is I don't give a shit if the PTO race is or isn't the Middle Distance World Championship. I don't give a shit if you put your Middle Distance World Championship in Portugal. What I do
European
care
Championship.
About, yeah, that's what I meant. What I do care about is the optics to those people who are trying to watch the sport or even aren't watching the sport but are casual viewers, and then they see this announcement, then they see that announcement, and then that's corrected. It just looks bad. It looks unprofessional, unplanned, and it doesn't look very polished.
It's 100%, mate. And it's not even just that, though. It's the fact that we have been talking a lot, and we know that the PTO on the same page is about it's creating a season-long narrative, right? It's a big part. In order to try to make this sport a broadcastable entity, it's a story, it's a season, it's a narrative. You to assume that if this is the World Championship Series, the races that happen in those parts of the world, if there are to be regional titles, would be part of that series. No, that's like, I mean, what's an anecdote or a comparison or a metaphor we can use? It'd be like the World Cup, right? I mean, I don't know, sorry, they've got the European champs, but you would naturally assume that it is part of the same series. If this is World Triathlon going, this is finally our middle distance series. This is our World Championship Series. The equivalent of WTCS, which is for short course, this is the middle/long distance version of that we're doing in partnership with the PTO. However, the European Championships and the Asian Championships and whatever regional championships will not be part of that series. They're going to be some other weird thing that you're not doing with the PTO. You're going to do it yourself, even though you're going to have the athletes contracted and all this stuff to the PTO series. So you're going to get the better athletes at those championships. No, we'll do it ourselves. And because I believe, again, I'm not au fait with the fucking bullshit politics of World Triathlon, that you can't win it. Like, and so let's say I went to the European Championships and I won. I'm still not the European champion. You have to be European to be a European champion. Whereas with Ironman, anybody can win the Asia Pacific champs. Anybody can win the European champs. Anybody can win the North America champs. So that's another weird little like just layer
strange little wrinkle to make the sport a little bit harder to follow.
World Triathlon making the sport harder to follow. World Triathlon making the sport more complicated than it needs to be. World Triathlon just fucking making this sport. I need to stop myself. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to get the emails. But I just saw this. I was like, fucking, aren't we beyond this? Like, surely this stuff was worked out. You're right. It looks...
Whatever you do, whatever the backroom fucking shenanigans are, don't announce shit until it's signed and done and decided. Because if it goes wrong, it makes us all look like fools.
So you think the PTO's got a part? You think the blame lays with the PTO? They're making the announcement too early?
No. I mean, I think the blame lies with both entities. Yeah. The PTO announced something that wasn't signed and wasn't ready. And World Triathlon, probably reading into it, put them into position to thinking that it was signed and it was ready, and then went and did the dirty on them for whatever reason.
I think a recurring segment of this podcast is going to be, what are we thinking about the upcoming PTO series next year? because I would love to know, again, we spoke about it as a result of the reel went out a couple of weeks ago, right? Which was us talking about what the Ironman Pro Series did for our levels of excitement for the PTO series. What about now? Here we are a couple of weeks later. We've had this fuckery. I mean, we've both heard plenty of rumblings about what's happening with the PTO behind the scenes. Not good. How are you feeling about that PTO series next year?
Yeah, I mean, there's two different things, isn't there? There's the PTO series if it happens, like the series of races. We only know 2 races at the moment, but if there is a series of races, yes, I'm excited for it. But then there's the reality of where we sit right now. And where we sit right now is there are 2 races announced. There's been some weird fucking ups with World Triathlon, and there isn't much to be excited about around that. And if you're a supporter of the sport, you don't know where to put your support. You don't know if let's say you are someone who wants to go on holiday and watch some PTO races. You don't know how to plan your year of travel. We're getting to that point where people start to think about summer holidays and stuff. And if you're an athlete who is thinking, well, there's the Ironman series there and it's ready and it's good to go, or there's this PTO series that seems to be stuttering for some reason, and then there's some rumblings in the background that we've both heard, and it starts to worry you, doesn't it? So where do you put your energy?
But that 100%, because I look at it like you've got this sort of, when you've got what's the like, not a monopoly, duopoly, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've got Ironman who are Ironman, and yep, whatever you love or hate them, they've got this track record of consistently putting on good races. They've had their problems this year, but it's consistent. It's the McDonald's of triathlon. You know what you're going to get. You can go to any Ironman, or you've got a pretty good idea of what the experience you've got. You've got the PTO who's sort of like coming in going, we're going to, set the world on fire. We're making all this stuff. And all we have heard since that initial announcement about this series is it's not getting more and more positive and more excitement and more anticipation. It's like, it's like constantly just, it feels like everything we're hearing is these little chips against, and it's making me more and more nervous and worried. And to the point where, like I said, we're basically in December. I know some athletes have got contracts. I've heard some haven't. I heard contracts are not for money. I've heard so many things. I'm hearing so many conflicting things, and not just about the Pro Series, but about the actual state of the PTO, which we will not verbalize on a podcast because we don't know. But I'm not hearing a lot of good. So for me, I'm talking with my guys who race, and in the start of this year, it was like all about, fuck, that PTO series is where it's at. We need to get you on that PTO series, PTO. Now I'm going, probably look at Ironman. That Ironman series is looking pretty fucking good right now. And Ironman aren't doing anything. Ironman are sitting back, arms crossed, watching this unfold. All they did was announce a race series. They've done nothing else. And it seems like...
And you need to listen to that interview I did with Tyler, because we discussed this, and we discussed
Taylor?
the PTO and Taylor, sorry.
We
discussed the PTO and Ironman. And she's of the opinion that as soon as the PTO say, or if anything negative happens with the PTO, if they don't exist anymore, or if their series doesn't cut it and doesn't happen like the way they said it will, Ironman will just cancel their race series. That's what she thinks.
I've seen a lot of people say that as well, and again, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I just hope that maybe they see that there's value in it next year, and they go, actually, this fucking actually kind of worked, to be honest.
Yeah. Give it 1 year, see how it works. If it works, roll on. Many more years to come.
But yeah, I am getting increasingly nervous about the prospects of that series. I mean, I just feel like no organization withholds this much information that long. Like, let's use a movie, for example, right? Or a video game or something. If there's an extended period without announcements, it's not like, things are cooking behind the scenes really good. No, it's normally signs of problems.
Yeah. It's like it's like when a movie's coming out and they don't release the review embargo until the day before it's released.
Exactly.
There's no confidence there. So,
well, that's the word, right? I think that's the perfect word to wrap this part up, is that I'm losing confidence in what that PTO is. I'm still very excited about it. I fucking hope they nail it. I'm losing confidence in it. I'm losing confidence in it being what we expected it to be. Like, I feel like I need to lower my expectations a little bit, and I just get nervous that yet again triathlon is going to disappoint us in 2024 with that stuff.
We'll see. That's probably a good place to leave it, isn't it?
It certainly is, Jimbo. If people want to find out more about Talking Triathlon, where do they need to go?
Well, if you want to support the show, jump on at patreon.com/talking triathlon. If you want to follow Tim, he's at T14 on Instagram. And I'm bale.james at bale.james85 on Instagram too. Find us across all social networks at Talking Triathlon on Instagram and at Talk Triathlon on Twitter. And if you join the Patreon group, you'll be part of a growing community of legends like us. You will put you in the WhatsApp group. You can be on the Facebook thing. We talk triathlon a lot. We do it outside of this podcast. So, there's always more to say.
Exactly right. We're going to do another bonus episode. I think we're due one actually probably next week. I think we have to do another one.
Probably are. It'll be like the Christmas bonus episode, won't it?
Oh, I don't know. I have to check. But I've also got Taylor Spivey lined up to come on the podcast. I got Martin Van Riel lined up to come on the podcast. So we're getting through it. We got to get some more guests on the show. Just want to remind everybody the third place in the 35 to 39 age category from the Phuket Triathlon, which is
got yourself an elephant.
I've got a few elephants. I hope you guys have a good week. Sorry about last week. Jimbo, we'll be back next week. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.
Cheerio.